Thank you all so much for joining us online and in person for our annual Pesach preparation workshop. Welcome. And let's get started. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us. And what we're going to try to do is to make Pesach preparation to kosher your home and your kitchen as easy as possible within the bounds of halacha. We know that Pesach is Man Cherutenu. It's the time of our freedom. And yet many, even though it's the time of our freedom, many have anxiety, stress, preparing for the holiday. Many view this holiday not only as the story of going from slavery in Mitzrayim to freedom, but going from slavery in Mitzrayim to slavery in the kitchen. And so there is indeed a lot of work and preparation that goes into making Pesach, but I think sometimes people are strict when not required. I think sometimes people don't understand what really is necessary. And here, as always, knowledge is power. And so what we're going to try to do is to try to calm everyone and to try to talk about some of the halachos. So this way you can better prepare and stay calm while preparing for the holiday. So let's review and clarify the halachot of preparing your home and kitchen for Pesach. The Aruch HaShulchan, Rabbi Chil Michal Epstein, writes that on Pesach, there's 3 positive mitzvot and 4 negative mitzvot. In other words, 3 mitzvot that you're obligated to do and 4 mitzvot that you're obligated to refrain from. The 3 positive commandments, what are those? One of them is eating matzah on the first night of Pesach, based on the pasuk Be'erev Tochlu Matzot. In the diaspora, we eat matzah also on the second night, of course. The second mitzvah is called Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. You have to relate and reenact the story as if you yourself, as if we ourselves are going out of Mitzrayim. I once heard a beautiful idea that maybe the whole mission of our lives is to take oneself out of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim is not just a country, but it's kind of a concept that it's a country that limits us, that sometimes constrains us. It's the shackles of social conformity and all the different things out there in the world that maybe hold us back. So the mission in our lives is to take ourselves out of Mitzrayim, out of those limitations, to be the best that we could be. So the first mitzvah is eating matzah. The second mitzvah is relating the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of coming out of Mitzrayim. And that's based on the pasuk, V'higadata lebincha bayom mahu, right? That you're supposed to share the story. You're supposed to relate the story to your children and to your family members. And if, let's say, if you don't have children, then you're supposed to tell the story to yourself. The third, but hopefully you're with somebody and you could share the story with one another. The third positive mitzvah is called tashbitu, and that's the mitzvah to eliminate chametz from your possession on the morning prior to Pesach. There are 4 negative mitzvah, 4 mitzvot lo taseh. One of them is that you're not allowed to eat chametz all 7 days or 8 days in the diaspora. Right? You can't have chametz. You all know that, right? Chametz includes bread and cookies and pasta and cereals and all different kinds of foods that have flour and water in the grain, one of the 5 grains mixed with water, and it wasn't washed properly. So then that is most probably going to be chametz. The second mitzvah is that you're not allowed to eat tarovet chametz, a mixture that includes chametz. Number 3 is lo yera'eh chametz, sometimes known as bal yera'eh, which means that chametz should not be seen in your home. And number 4 is lo yimateh chametz, that chametz should not be found in your home. Very often those 2 mitzvot are said together, bal yera'eh and bal yimatzeh. Bal is another way to say lo. In the pasuk it says lo yera'eh and lo yimatzeh, and those mitzvot are sometimes known as bal yira, bal yimatzeh. It's important to understand that there's really no prohibition to see chametz on Pesach. There's no prohibition even to see chametz in your house on Pesach. Really, the prohibition is that you're not allowed to own. You're not allowed to be in ownership of chametz. So meaning chametz that you own shouldn't be found or seen in your home. Obviously, right? It's not to have chametz lying around. We're going to talk about it. That's not a good idea. but at least that is the prohibition. According to the Rambam, there's a fifth lo taseh that means that you can't have chametz after chatzot, after midday on the 14th. According to others, it's really a positive command of eliminating the chametz from your home, so that's why you can't eat after chatzot. Either way, you're not allowed to have chametz, not only on Pesach, but you're not allowed to have chametz already from midday before Pesach, which is Wednesday. And the rabbis extended it even to be 2 hours before that, from the 4th hour of the day. With many food prohibitions, the prohibition is really just that you're not allowed to eat it, right? You're not allowed to have pork, you're not allowed to have shrimp, but you are allowed to benefit from it. Let's say if for some reason you find in your possession let's say you're a person's a fisherman and they fish for tuna, but a non-kosher fish comes into their net. They're allowed to sell that non-kosher fish. A Jew is not allowed to be in the business of not kosher, but if you're in a kosher business and for some reason you acquire, attain something not kosher, or you're just a regular person, whatever kind of professional you are, whatever you do, but somehow something becomes not kosher, or some way you bought something from the market and it turns out that it's not kosher. So the halacha is you're not allowed to eat it, but you're allowed to benefit from it. You could give it or sell it to a non-Jew. You could give it to your pet. When it comes to meat and milk, so this is more stringent. When it comes to basar v'chalav, you're not allowed to eat it. You're not allowed to benefit from it. And you're also not allowed to cook meat and milk together. With chametz, this takes it up another notch. And this is part of what gets everyone so anxious when it comes to Pesach, is not only are you not allowed to eat it, and you're not allowed to benefit from chametz. So let's say you're walking on Pico and there's a non-kosher bakery. You're not supposed to intentionally smell the aroma of the bread or the cookies or the donuts from the bakery, because that is benefiting from chametz. Okay, so you can't eat chametz on Pesach after midday or after 4 hours of Erev Pesach. You can't benefit from chametz, and you're also not allowed to own. Okay, this is the extension of chametz, which is an interesting, unusual, unique halacha, which is that you're not allowed to own chametz over the course of Pesach. It's such a serious prohibition that if a person owns chametz illegally over the course of Pesach, what do I mean by illegal? Because let's say you sold the chametz with the rabbi and you sold it to the non-Jew, okay, so then you weren't in ownership of the chametz. But if a person is in ownership of chametz over the course of Pesach, not only is it a very, very serious prohibition, and there's a punishment of karet, but also you are not allowed to eat that chametz even after Pesach. One opinion says it's a Torah prohibition. We generally follow the position that it's a rabbinic prohibition, that the rabbis imposed a penalty upon a person who owned chametz over the course of Pesach. But that just shows the seriousness of the prohibition. Why is it prohibited? Why did the Torah create such a prohibition? Okay, we don't necessarily understand the ways of Hashem and the rationale of all the mitzvot, but some of the commentaries wonder, why did the Torah impose this additional level of prohibition that you're not even allowed to own chametz? What's that called? That's called bal yira, bal yamatzeh. Those are two separate prohibitions, but it's one general prohibition, you might call it also, that you're not supposed to own chametz. And the Ran gives two explanations. One explanation he says is that with non-kosher food, you avoid it all year long. With chametz, we're accustomed to eating chametz over the course of the year. It's perfectly permissible to eat chametz during the course of the year. So that's why perhaps the Ran, Rabbi Nissim from Spain, he says that the Torah imposed an additional level of prohibition that you're not allowed to own it. Why? Because if you were to own it, you might come and eat it. Why? Because all year long you're accustomed to eating chametz, and so that's why maybe the Torah needed to make a more stringent prohibition to ensure compliance. A second reason that the Ran says is that you see that chametz is more serious from the fact that there's a prohibition of karet. It's like, that it's a heavenly from the heavenly court. The heavenly court cuts you off from the Jewish people. Different understandings of what karet is, but that's a serious heavenly punishment of karet. And so because of that, maybe that's why the Torah imposed also an additional level of prohibition, consistent with the seriousness of the prohibition, that there's a punishment of karet. In sum, if you want to kind of just crunch it down, we try to make things simple and user-friendly for everyone. We want to ease the stress. Okay, I gave a lot of different ideas. To crunch it down, you can't eat chametz and you can't own chametz over the course of Pesach. Okay, I mean, there's other details, right, that I said, but that's to crunch it down. So why do you have to clean your home for Pesach? Why do you have to kosher it? Why do we have to have a whole class about cleaning your home for Pesach? Well, number one, because you cannot own chametz because of Bali Rabbi Matzeh. Secondly, if chametz is lying around in the house, you might accidentally come and eat it, which is a Torah serious prohibition on Pesach. And number three, there's a positive commandment of what? Of tashbitu, of eliminating the chametz on the day prior to Pesach. That's fulfilled by doing bedikah chametz Tuesday night, and then we burn the chametz Wednesday morning. That's a fulfillment of the mitzvah of tashbisu. How do you prepare your home? So that explains why do you have to clean your home for Pesach? If somebody stops you on the street, oh, that's a good question. Well, I just gave you the three reasons. You're not allowed to own chametz, you can't eat chametz, and also there's actually a positive commandment to clean the house prior to Pesach. Now, the good news is, and I some of these things, these lines I've used previous years, and we've reviewed this each year, but it's always good to remember it. I've also told you the joke about the woman. You know, we take a drop out of the cup. We take a drop out of the cup for each of the makot, and so the story is told about a woman who took 11 drops out of her cup. They said, why did you take 11 drops out of your cup? There's only 10 makot, there's only 10 plagues. She said, for me, preparing for Pesach is also a plague. If you have any questions, both you're welcome to, if you want, maybe you could write it down and ask later if you're on the Zoom. Great to see all of you by Zoom. You could also put on your video, maybe even for a couple of minutes, maybe not the whole time. Of course, you're welcome the whole time. But even if you don't want to do the whole time, you could put it on for a couple minutes. Hey, John, thanks so much for putting on your video. Frida, extra points. But yeah, nice. It would be nice to see you for a couple minutes. And you're welcome to put a question in the chat, and I will try to get to those. Questions. How do you prepare your home for Pesach? Here's the good news: you don't need to rip out the carpeting. You don't need to replace the floor tiles. You don't need to finally, treat that outside wood table that you wanted to put what is that called? To put the to do the shine, or to treat it with however you treat the wood table outside. So you don't need to blowtorch the curtains. Okay, you don't need to do all these things, but there are a few different mechanisms that we employ in our war versus chametz, and that's a whole separate discussion. Why do we have this campaign, this war versus chametz? And we emphasize the mitzvah of eating matzah, right? But matzah is a poor man's bread. What you see is what you get. Also, well, it's poor man's bread because it makes you poor, because of how expensive it is. But also, matzah was a food of slavery that became the food of redemption. It came to symbolize, right, the how quick the redemption was, that God took us out of Mitzrayim very quickly, b'chipazon, before we knew it. Boom, we were free. And it's a beautiful thing that you have this food that represented our, the depths in terms of slavery. And this food became the symbol of the redemption of the Jewish people. A little bit like the menorah on the Arch of Titus, parenthetically, where that was the symbol of our exile. And now that menorah has become the emblem of the state of Israel. Rabbi Herzog was opposed to that choice for the emblem because he felt that menorah is the exact replica of the Arch of Titus. There's a whole question of that. What did the menorah exactly look like? And did it have a base? Did it have legs, three legs? But they chose on the emblem that exact menorah. So Rav Herzog was opposed to that choice of the emblem. And Gershom Sholem, he gave the counter argument. He said, no, it's a perfect choice. It's a perfect choice because that menorah that symbolized the exile of the Jewish people have come back after 2,000 years, and now the menorah, kind of figuratively, and the Jewish people are being brought back to Israel. Similarly, the matzah, which was the food of slavery, is now the food that represents the Geula of Am Yisrael. There's a lot of different dimensions as to the significance of matzah and why we're so vehemently opposed to chametz. But we know that we're opposed to it. So there's different mechanisms in our war versus chametz. The first one is that we clean the house in a traditional way, and that leads to bedika on the night before Pesach, and that leads to the diur, the burning of the chametz. If you're going, let's say you're going away for Pesach, so then you should do bedika on the night before you leave. You only have to make a bracha, though. You only should make a bracha on the bedika if it's the night before Pesach. If you do it on an earlier night, you should do bedika, but you don't make a bracha. And there's different opinions whether you even have to put out the 10 pieces of bread. But that's in terms of bedika and biur. The second mechanism that we have is bittul, which is to nullify the chametz. And we'll talk about bittul, but that works on a Torah level to just nullify the chametz. So why not just do bittul? We do bittul twice. We do bittul at the end of the bedika, right at the end of the bedika, the night before Pesach. We say kol chamira v'chamia dika b'shusi. Any leaven products in my possession should be nullified, should be null and void, should be considered ownerless and like the dust of the earth. Lahave hefker kafir diara. We do that after bedika, and then we also do it, or your agent does it when your agent burns your chametz for you the morning prior to Pesach. Then that's when the person does bittul again, and you should also remember to do bittul at that time. Kol chamira v'chamia dika b'shusi. It's the same formula pretty much. There's a slight difference I'm not going to get into now, but we do bittul twice. What does bittul accomplish? According to Rashi says it actually fulfills the mitzvah of tashbitu. When you nullify sincerely and genuinely the chametz in your mind and you articulate that, you're in fulfillment of the mitzvah of eliminating chametz, tashbitu, one of the positive commandments. Tosfot disagrees. Tosfot says no. Tosfot says that when you nullify it, you're essentially making it hefker. You're making it ownerless. And so, and by making it ownerless, you're no longer in ownership of the chametz. And so it's a kind of it's a roundabout way. It's where you're able to by doing bittul, so you're going to be able to avoid the prohibition of Bal Yirah Bal Yimatzeh. Either way, why not do bittul? Why not do bittul? And then you don't need to do bedika and diur. You don't need to check your search. Just nullify any chametz in your house. And if the Torah really gives credence to that and says that that's effective, so then why do you need to do anything else? So this is for two reasons. Number one, because for bittul to work, it needs to be absolutely genuine. You need sincere intention that you're nullifying it. So if you have a really good, tasty, Twix bar, and you have, really, maybe it's not so simple. But we don't want to rely on people's intention regarding such a serious prohibition. The second reason is because you might nullify it, but if it's sitting around your house and lying around and it's in the cabinet and it's in the fridge and you didn't take any other measures, so then you might come and eat it. Okay, so the bittul might work so that you're not in ownership of it. But if it's sitting around and you eat it, then you'll be in violation of eating chametz. For that reason, that's why we say you have to do bittul, but bittul is not enough. You have to also clean the house. And that cleaning of the house leads to bedika and biur, as we said. The third mechanism that we have is mechira, is selling the chametz to a non-Jew. You're not selling the chametz to the rabbi. I don't want your chametz, but you're appointing the rabbi to, on your behalf, serve as your agent to sell the chametz in your possession, anything that you designate, to sell it to the non-Jew. And that's how that works. So you put, okay. So let's talk a little bit more about these three mechanisms. Let's make it easy for you. Okay, so now we have knowledge is power. We know the mitzvot. We know what we have to accomplish. We know why. Why do we have to clean the house? We know why, right? We know exactly why. And we have different mechanisms at our disposal to be successful in preparing for the holiday and observing the holiday. The mechanisms, again, are the regular cleaning, it's the bittul, and it's the mechira. So let's talk about cleaning the house. Again, you don't need to blowtorch the curtains. You don't need to, and you don't even need to move around, to move around your fridge and to move it out, to clean the back there. What do you need to do? What you should do is, now, for everything that I'm going to say, if you have somebody who could help you, if you have a cleaning lady, you have a housekeeper, you have a family member, right? Who you have a teenage son or grandson, right? And so put him or her to work. Of course, you want to take advantage of people to help you out. So when I'm talking about these things, some of them can be done. So the first thing is that all the floors obviously should be swept and carpets vacuumed. And hopefully somebody could take care of that for you, but that's something that needs to be done. And maybe you do that as well, which is fine and wonderful. Desk drawers should be quickly checked. All the desk drawers of the house should be quickly checked. Jacket and coat pockets and the backpack, backpacks and purses. Backpacks and purses. Couch cushions should be lifted, and you should check under there. Those are some of the main places that you have to check. You don't have to go crazy. Look through the drawers, check the jacket pockets and coat pockets. Look through your backpacks and your gym bags. You got that protein bar, whatever it is, that's 2 months old, and it's in that pocket that you never use, or because you haven't gone to the gym in 3 months. But those are the main places. The halacha is that anywhere that chametz is generally brought, you should check. If it's a place where chametz is never brought, like the garage or like a bathroom, so then there's no need to check that place. If there's children in the house that run around, so then that's more challenging. And no, you can't sell them, Miriam, sorry. But if you have children in the house, but then they might take the chametz from the kitchen and then they walk around with it places. So you might have to check even those places where there's no chametz brought, just to make sure, as if kids are walking around with chametz. The children, of course, should be asked to check their backpack. Let them check their drawers. Let them take care of those things. Either way, you don't have to go. You don't have to go overboard. I don't know how long does that take? What I just described. Is it an hour? Is it less? Is it more? But hopefully it shouldn't take that long. The second mechanism is bittul. I told you do it the night of the bedika, you do it in the morning. And bittul is essentially nullifying, and that's all you need to do with regards to crumbs. If it's the main area, of course, you've swept it up. A few days before Pesach, you do again a quick sweep, before the bedikas chametz as well. It's swept, vacuums, you use the vacuum on the carpet, but you've checked the cushions. But the Torah wasn't given to angels. The Torah was given to human beings. Each of you is a great Jew. I know all of you, one degree or another. You're a good Jew. You're a great Jew. We're so blessed to have you in the community. If you're taking time, an hour in your busy schedule to think about how to prepare for Pesach, so that shows, right? That shows that you got things under control, right? That that you're organized, and also you're hoping for some leniency. So I'm going to try to give you some leniencies over the course of the way. And essentially, so since the Torah wasn't given to angels, we can't get to every crumb. And so that's why we have the concept of bittul. You've cleaned the house nicely, don't go overboard, and then you use the concept of bittul to nullify any crumbs, let's say, that's underneath the refrigerator. Yeah, clean in front of the refrigerator, and as far as you can go to. But everything else, nullify the chametz, and that will work. Okay, and then we said for any other food, let's say if it's whiskey or grain products and chametz that you don't want to throw out, and it's also not something. It's something that's it's something that's a box of pasta that it's hard to nullify. That nullification is really for crumbs. But for other things, then you could put it into a cabinet, and you could tape up the cabinet before in the days leading up to Pesach. You put it in an area in the garage, and those different locations you include in your sale to the non-Jew, and you appoint the rabbi. You fill out the form. You make him your agent. Why do you take that pen? Right? You take the pen or something from the rabbi. That's a kinyan. You don't really need the kinyan to appoint the rabbi as an agent, because you're telling him, I want you to be my agent to sell the chametz. You're also putting it into a document. But the minig is, if possible, to do it in person, and then you do it. It's stronger in person, and you're doing that kinyan, which strengthens the fact that you're making the rabbi your agent to sell your chametz for you. Okay, I've had this dilemma. I know some rabbis and Chabad, they allow you to do it online, fill out the form, submit it online. I've had the question the last few years, should I do that? I said, you know what? It's permitted to do that. It's legitimate. It's not the best way, but it's legitimate. But I don't need to offer it, because for those who want to do it online, there's other rabbis and Chabad. You could find ways to do it online, and because they hate, you could do it that way. So that's why I just offer it. It forces the person to come in person. Chas v'shalom, they have to schlep to the shul, but they come to shul. I get to say hello to the person. How you doing? Where you going for? What are your plans for Pesach? And we do the mechira in person. And now there are those who are stringent to not sell actual chametz to the non-Jew. Okay, personally, my wife and I, we try not to sell actual chametz. Whiskey, there's a whole question. Is that actual chametz? You can't drink whiskey. That's chametz. Is that actual chametz, or is it more of a mixture of chametz and more a derivative of chametz? Either way, you can't drink regular whiskey on Pesach, of course. But for those who are stringent not to sell chametz gamor, can you sell whiskey? So we're reliant, my wife and I, we already arrange a few weeks before Pesach, right? When she goes to Costco, right? When you go to Costco 2 weeks before Pesach, don't buy 10 boxes of pasta. Try to plan it out in advance. So we try not to sell. I don't sell for myself personally. And there are those who don't. I don't have bread in my possession. I don't have pasta in my possession. I don't have these things. Whiskey, the couple bottles of whiskey we'll include in the sale to the non-Jew. What we include are things that maybe have an ingredient of chametz, but where it's a minority ingredient. The common custom, this is very important, common custom is that we rely on the sale of chametz to the non-Jew for all types of chametz. Okay, that's the widespread custom. You could sell a loaf of bread, you can sell pasta, you could sell whatever it is, and it's perfectly legitimate and it's fine, and I'm happy to do it, and I've done it for years and years for hundreds and hundreds of people, and I will do it this year to serve as the agent for members of the community who are selling all different kinds of chametz. The important thing is, though, is to, before Pesach, to cordon it off and to put it in a cabinet so you make sure that you don't access it. The story is told about the non-Jew who came to Rav Chaim Soloveitchik, and Rav Chaim Soloveitchik had sold the chametz to him, and the non-Jew said, I want my whiskey. I want my chametz. And Reb Chaim Soloveitcher was so happy because he said, this way we're going to teach my community that's a real sale. It's a real sale to the non-Jew. And right, you're relinquishing ownership and you're selling it so that it's not yours. So you're not in ownership of it, and you're not going to eat it because it's been taped off and it's been covered in the garage. So it's not something you're going to access. Let's move. Okay, so half the shir is on kind of cleaning the home for Pesach. We figured it out, right? Reasonable cleaning. You do that bedika and biur. You nullify it twice, both the night before and the morning of. And you put any chametz objects, that you want to sell, you put it into a cabinet, tape it up, and that's going to be included in the mechira. You're ready to go, lock, stock, and barrel, locked and loaded, right? I think it's fairly doable and reasonable, and you got this. You got this. Nothing to worry about. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, Rabbi, nothing to worry about. But I do want to say before I forget, I know there's a tremendous amount of work that goes into Pesach, and I'll end with this. But preparing for the meals, all the cooking that goes on, especially if you're having family. So you should try to keep a positive spirit when you approach these things. I know try is the operative word, but to try to be besimcha, ivdu et Hashem besimcha, to serve Hashem always with happiness. And that preparing also has religious value. When you prepare for a holiday, that also has significance, and to try to have a positive spirit when it comes to that. Let's move now from the home into the kitchen. Let's see. Let me see the chat here. I don't see. Where's the chat box? Okay, I don't see any questions yet. Okay, so people are speechless. No questions. That's good. Okay, so maybe we'll pause now. We're about to move from the home into the kitchen. Let's pause for a moment. Yeah, Miriam with a question.
They're minhagim not to eat any matzah or matzah byproducts from Purim to Pesach or for a period of time.
Okay, I'm glad that you're asking this.
Does that include anything beyond the matzah itself? For instance, if you have something made with matzah meal, because you can't eat.
Okay, great question. So Miriam is asking. It's not. I wasn't planning on talking, but it's a good question. There's different customs about refraining from matzah prior to Pesach. Right, the mitzvah is to eat matzah on Pesach night. There is a prohibition of not eating matzah the day before Pesach, and it's kind of like an offside penalty, a serious flagrant offside penalty, right? Because the mitzvah is supposed to be done that night, so you're not supposed to. That would take away from the excitement of the mitzvah if you're eating matzah the day before. So it's kind of rushing into the activity prematurely. The Gemara compares it to a person who's about to get married to someone, and then with his fiance, is intimate with his fiance before the wedding. Similarly with matzah, right? So we refrain from matzah the day before. That's the prohibition. There's a custom, a widespread custom, many who refrain from matzah 14 days before, from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, from this Thursday. And then you have those who refrain even for the 30 days before. It's a minhag. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein mentions it. That's how I grew up. I grew up 30 days before. We don't have matzah. The idea behind that is because already 30 days before, you're supposed to be preparing and learning the halachot and thinking about Pesach. And so we refrain from matzah all 30 days. It's a minhag. It's a minhag. Again, the prohibition is the day before. Some observe 2 weeks, and some observe 30 days. Some have a custom not to eat matzah all year long. Aside from Pesach, but I'm just joking about that. Although some people do avoid it. But what Miriam is asking, what about? Okay, so that custom would apply to anything that's let's say that's baked. That's baked. Certainly the day before, because the minig is really that's really a minig 14 days or 30 days before. If it's something that's cooked, then you can't even fulfill the mitzvah matzah with that. So then that is permitted even the day before, if it's like cooked with matzah meal.
So you could eat a matzo ball.
And you could eat a matzah ball prior to on Erev Pesach. You could eat a matzah ball. Exactly. Because that will not satisfy the mitzvah of matzah. So you're allowed to eat a matzah ball prior to Pesach. Some don't have a matzah ball on Pesach because they don't eat kabrux. Okay, but so for those who are stringent not to have kabrux, they won't have matzah. They won't have matzah balls. The Vilna Gaon and the yeshivish and the halach is that kabrux is permitted because once it's baked into matzah, now it's matzah and it can't become chametz. Once it's baked into matzah, it cannot become chametz. But there is a Hasidic custom, and some are stringent for it, which is called gebrutz, not to dip the matzah into water or into sauce or to cook it with anything that's liquid. Why? Maybe because maybe there's strands of dough. It's not a crazy possibility, and that's why the matzah factories have to be careful to bake the matzah at a proper temperature, because if they bake it at too high a temperature, it'll bake in 20 seconds, and it could be that it's not cooked inside. So that's why the matzah factories have to bake it in a proper fashion. We generally assume once something is matzah, it's matzah, and it can't become chametz. And that's why the Vilna Gaon and the yeshivish and the halacha is that you're permitted to have it. Anyway, that's the whole discussion about kabrach. But anyway, before Pesach, you would be allowed to have the matzah ball, certainly for those who have kabrux. If it's something that's baked, and it's baked with, what would be something baked, like matzah meal, and you bake something with matzah meal, then I would say to refrain from it, let's say it's a cake, and it's baked with matzah meal, I would refrain from it certainly the day before Pesach. The day before Pesach. And I think it's okay in the week or two leading up to it.
Matzah bar, of course, the kids want it, and their parents are like, no, you can't have it.
Right.
That's a good one, because I can put it.
Right. What happens after Pesach with the sale? Thank you, Jonathan, for the question. After Pesach, the rabbi purchases the chametz back. The non-Jew puts a down payment down. It's a complete sale before Pesach. The non-Jew puts a down payment down. After Pesach, either the non-Jew is going to put up millions and millions and millions of dollars for all the chametz, but every single year, and every rabbi that I've known has done it, the non-Jew says, you know what, let me sell you back the chametz. So Jonathan, a few minutes after Pesach, I purchase back the chametz, and then you're permitted to go ahead and consume it and eat it, do whatever you want with it. Let's go from the house into the kitchen. Number one, obvious. All the foods that you have in your home and that you're going to eat on Pesach, it needs to be kosher lePesach. So when you shop, it's good. You have to be careful to shop and only buy something that has an OUP, right, where it's kosher for Pesach. It's good to go to a grocery store or a market where they have sections that are totally kosher for Pesach. But don't rely on that, because there's one aisle that's kosher for Pesach, there's one aisle that's not kosher for Pesach. Sometimes you have people who go through the store, right? They take the kosher for Pesach ketchup. By the way, Heinz has a kosher for Pesach ketchup now. That's wonderful news. I think they came out with it last year. This way you don't, right? So you can have a good ketchup with your fries. But so somebody takes the kosher for Pesach ketchup, and then they realize I don't need it, and then they what they do is it's a couple of weeks before Pesach, they take the not kosher for Pesach food item, then they realize while they're shopping they don't need it, and they put it back on the shelf in the wrong place. Or sometimes the store doesn't put things in exactly the right place. So either way, I want to move on quickly from this, if you could save the questions on this, but obviously foods need to be kosher lePesach. Secondly, your pots and pans and silverware and dishes also need to be kosher for Pesach. Okay, it's a great story of a royal banquet. This is a true story. I think this happened with Rabbi Heyer when he was in Vancouver, and there was a royal banquet from royalty from England, where Prince Charles was there and the Duke was there, and they had a royal British banquet in Vancouver, and And Prince Charles noticed that, I think it was Rabbi Heyer, he's walking around with dishes, and he was moving around the dishes because they changed places in the middle of the meal. And so he was carrying his dishes from one place to the other. And when Prince Charles asked him, well, why'd you do that? He said, because we need to have kosher dishes. And the prince said, oh, I never knew that you have to not only keep kosher, but you even have to have kosher dishes. Can you explain to me more about keeping kosher? And then another person came along and said hello. And that Jew wasn't as careful about his dishes during the banquet. And he came, when the prince saw him, the prince said to him, so the guy said, I'm Jewish also, because he saw that the prince had befriended the rabbi. So he said, I'm Jewish also. So the prince answered back, so where were your dishes? So the foods need to be kosher for Pesach, and the pots and pans and everything also need to be kosher for Pesach. If you have utensils and silverware that are kosher for Pesach, that are designated for the holiday, you're good to go. In terms of the dishes. But what about if you want to kosher some of your utensils, number one? And number two, let's talk about the countertop and the oven and the microwave and those things. Now, one easy way about this is, of course, I should have mentioned this earlier, you go away for Pesach. I'm just joking. But that is one way. You go away for Pesach. By the way, if you go away for Pesach, and my guess is that most of you are home for Pesach. But if you are going away for Pesach, there's a difference of opinion. Can you just sell all the chametz in your house? You're not going to be home for Pesach. Can I just sell everything through the rabbi to the non-Jew? Rabbi Mordechai Willig permits it. Rabbi Mordechai Willig permits it. There are those that say that, you could sell a good portion of your apartment or a good portion of your house, but that you should leave a couple of rooms. So this way you could at least do, some cleaning, some basic cleaning, and you could do at least bedika on the night before you leave in that area that you haven't sold. But let's go back now in terms of koshering the kitchen. There's a principle when it comes to koshering called kibolo kachpolto. As an item absorbs the taste, that's the way to remove the taste. So let's say if a pan or grill is used for food without the medium of water, it's like a grill, then the way to kosher that is through fire, right? Because it's used through fire. So you're going to extract the taste through fire. If a pot or pan is used for food with water, so that usually requires hagala, that it requires koshering through boiling water, right? Because it's used with water. So that's the way to extract the non-kosher taste. In this case, the chametz taste is through boiling water. Silverware, we assume, it's usually right. It's not silverware is not. You don't roast the silverware on the fire. You use the silverware sometimes for hot foods. So we generally assume that hagala, koshering with boiling water works. That's kind of the standard koshering is called hagala. That's koshering with boiling water. I'll get back to that in a second. Let's say you have a countertop or a sink. So here, it's not a grill. A grill, you need a fire to kosher the grill. I don't recommend koshering the barbecue. It's too dirty. It's hard to clean. And so if you're able to get new grates or you have special Pesach grates, then you could possibly use the grill. I'll get back to that. Use a barbecue, like one of those barbecues. But so one is called is koshering through fire. Okay, that's called libun. That's called libun. The second thing is koshering through water. That's called hagala. And then with a countertop or a sink, so then the things are poured onto it. That's how it becomes not kosher. And so the way to extract the taste is by pouring boiling water over the sink. And that's called irui rotchin, pouring boiling water over it. Okay, I'm gonna get to it. Okay, those are the three kinds of koshering. There's a couple other ways, but those are the three main ones. And it follows the principle of kabolo kachbolto. As it's absorbed, that's how you extract it. As well, you all just jumped on me. That's right. That there certain materials can be koshered, certain materials cannot be koshered. It's just impossible to kosher it. All metals can be koshered. Metals can be koshered. Smooth wood utensils can be koshered. If it's not smooth and it has cracks and it has crevices and it's going to be hard to clean it properly. But if it's a smooth wood utensil, that could be koshered. Granite or marble countertops can be koshered. Glass, that's a whole discussion. We generally assume, certainly Ashkenazic practice is that we don't kosher glass. You have kosher LePesach glasses. That's right. I mean, you don't kosher your all year round glasses. Plastic. What about plastic? Many poskim say you're not allowed to kosher plastic. Rabbi Gedalia Dov Schwartz is lenient and says you can, that it is permitted, you are able to, and it's permitted to kosher plastic. So there is a legitimate position to rely on when it comes to plastic. Porcelain, earthenware, china, right? That's called cheres. Then we don't kosher that. There's an interesting tshuva parenthetically where a couple, they're balei tshuva, and they were making their kitchen kosher. So they asked to Rav Moshe Feinstein, they had a very expensive set of china. And they wanted to know whether they had to throw out the china. So Rav Moshe said the general principle is that if china is not kosher, you just can't kosher it. Or if china is chametzik because it's used during the year, you can't use that for Pesach. However, just parenthetically, we don't generally rely on this. Rav Moshe said because they were balei tshuva, and he wanted to make it easier for them to kosher their kitchen, he said because of the extenuating circumstance, if you wait a year, there's one opinion, a minority opinion, that if you wait a year, then you can kosher it. We don't rely on that opinion, but there is such an opinion. There's also another opinion that says when the Gemara says you can't kosher it, that's if you do it once. But if you do it 3 times, then that works. So Moshe said for that family, he said, in your situation, if you wait a year and you do it 3 times, then you're permitted to do it that way. So if you have a very expensive china dish that becomes not kosher, ask the rabbi. You could ask me the shaila. There may be certain situations where we could save it. Another way to do is you put it in the oven and put it in the kiln and to kind of refashion it. But that's I don't know if you want to do that. But I'll give another. If you have a young couple recently married, they're moving to an apartment, and there's a dishwasher. So I have told them that they could kosher. What they should do is they should that as long as you have to wait a year, though it has to be a year, and as you can rely on this for Moshe for a year. But after a year, then you run through the cycle 3 times. Then you could rely on that for that extenuating case, where they're in that apartment.
Does that so?
Okay, so that's, by the way, 1 second. Let's so what do we mean by dishwasher? So let's talk about I'll get back to the dishwasher. Since I mentioned dishwasher, okay, because that's an important piece. Dishwasher, okay. What are the walls? What are the walls of the dishwasher? If the walls are stainless steel, then you could kosher the dishwasher for Pesach. If the walls are plastic, I just said it's a debate. Many say you shouldn't. There are those that say you still can. The racks are steel. They're coated with plastic, but they're steel racks. As long as the racks are clean, I know it's a dishwasher, but the racks are clean. So then you can kosher. In my opinion, you can kosher a dishwasher for Pesach. You try to make sure the bottom is as clean as possible, down below, and you run the dishwasher through the cycle 2 times. 1 time with soap and 1 time without soap. Now, the easier approach is to just, you can survive without the dishwasher for a few days, okay? But if you want to kosher the dishwasher and the walls are stainless steel, certainly if you have new racks, you're totally fine. But even if you don't have new racks, as I said, you can kosher the dishwasher by running it through the cycle 2 times. 2 times. 1 with soap and 1 without soap. If it's a porcelain interior, then you should not kosher it. You should not kosher it. As it was porcelain, china, and those things, you don't kosher. Okay, so so now we said that you have a few different forms of koshering, and there's different materials. Some you can kosher, like metal, you can kosher, and silver and those things you can kosher, but earthenware and china we generally don't kosher. Okay, I gave you an exception, maybe but we generally don't kosher china. When koshering, there's basically, I would say, 4 steps of koshering. Okay, so let's say you have your kiddush cups. You don't really need koshering, but the minig is to kosher it. The minig is to kosher it, right? Because you're not cooking chametz in the kiddush cup, but they're often washed. They're often washed in the sink with chametz dishes. You might put it in the dish. Well, I don't know if you put it in the dishwasher. Whatever it is, the minig is to kosher the kiddush cups, the bechers, or let's say silverware. You have certain pieces of silverware, all your silverware. You want to kosher for Pesach. It's very easy. What you do, there's 4 steps. The first thing is you have to make sure the item is clean. It has to be clean. It's got to be clean. I know all of you, your stuff is clean as a whistle anyway, right? You have to make sure it's clean. Number 2, you have to wait. You have to make sure to have waited 24 hours since you used the item for chametz. You need to wait 24 hours. Reason for that is because if it's within 24 hours, the taste will come out and the taste could go back in. So you wait 24 hours. This way, it's already, from a halachic basis, it's a negative taste. And any taste that comes out, we're not nervous about it going back in. If you're confused by what I just said, don't worry about it, okay? Practically, you got to wait 24 hours. That's the point. Let's say you make a mistake in the kitchen where what happened, somebody in the house, not you, of course, but somebody in the house took a dairy spoon and put it into the chicken soup. What's the halacha? The chicken soup will usually be kosher. Why? Because the chicken soup is 60 times the amount of that spoon. And the spoon might not have been used in the last day anyway. In any case, usually if it's just putting a spoon into the chicken soup's going to be kosher, the cholent's going to be kosher. But you have to kosher the spoon. So what do? You got to kosher that spoon. Or you have a fleshik pot, and by accident there was dairy that was put into the fleshik pot. You got to kosher that pot. What do? You clean it in the bathroom sink. You got to clean it. Then you put it aside for 24 hours. Don't put it in the place where somebody's going to then put it back in the drawer. It happens all the time. Put it aside. And then the third step is you put it into boiling water. You could use any non-Ben Yoma pot. Ben Yoma means it was used in the last 24 hours. Non-Ben Yoma means it wasn't used in the last 24 hours. You could use any. You should use any pot for koshering, as long as it's clean and as long as it hasn't been used in the last 24 hours. You can use that pot for koshering because the koshering is making it neutral. So you could use any pot for koshering. So you could use even, it turns out, the chametzik pot for koshering, as long as it's clean and it's not ben yomo. So then you could use that pot for koshering. Okay, if you want to kosher the pot too, so then what you need to do is the pot is clean, you waited the 24 hours, and then you kosher the pot by putting boiling water to the top, and then the boiling water will just go over will overflow. Okay, that's how you kosher a pot. To kosher silverware, or to kosher kosot, or to kosher whatever, ladles, whatever it is, you put it into the boiling water. Okay, you don't use your bare hand to put it into the water. Okay, you're very, very careful when you're doing these things. Fire safety, right? Remember laws of fire safety, and also be careful when you're doing the koshering. What's the 4th step of koshering? After you've kashered the pot, or you've kashered the silverware, whatever it is, then the Shulchan Aruch says, the minig is to rinse it with cold water. That's it, my friends. Not the end of the class, but that's it. Clean, 24 hours, the boiling water, rinse it with cold water at the very, very end. Let's now apply these rules. Oven. Interesting. Is an oven, you don't use that with the medium of water, so maybe that should need libun, like a high level of koshering by fire. Some say it should. Some say it should. We generally assume, you're right, there's no water used, but the food is not placed onto the walls of the oven. The food is placed in the oven, and it's the steam that's the issue. So many assume, and we follow this, that Hagala, that a form of Hagala works for the oven. But now you can't put the oven into boiling water either. So here's what you do with the oven. The oven needs to be cleaned, right? That's always the rule. It needs to be cleaned thoroughly. You could clean it. You have somebody clean it for you. Clean it with Easy Off. You just clean it thoroughly. Number two, the oven should not be used for 24 hours. And then you set the oven to the highest temperature, and you run the oven for an hour. Set the oven to the highest temperature, and you run the oven for an hour. And then you're good for the oven. If it has a self-cleaning mode, be careful. I've seen this so many times where it's a self-cleaning mode, but then when you use the self-cleaning mode, the oven breaks. Okay, then you're wondering if it's manufactured with a self-cleaning mode. Of course, it should work. That's what I would think, right? But if you have a self-cleaning mode, then that's great. That works as koshering. You're good to go. You put it for self-cleaning. You run it through one self-cleaning cycle. It's called self-koshering, and that's called libun. That's considered libun because it gets to a very high temperature. If you don't have a self-cleaning oven, I just told you what you do. You clean, you wait the 24 hours, you set it to the highest temperature, you run it for an hour, and you're fine. What about a microwave? Clean, don't use for 24 hours. Well, look, you could survive without the microwave for a few days. You're talking about a few days of Chol HaMoed, right? You could survive without it. Or if you can't survive without it, okay, you clean it well, you don't use for 24 hours, you put a styrofoam cup of water and you put it in there for 10 minutes. Some say then you should do it a second time, then you move to a cup to a different place so that the place that had the cup the first time could be kashered. Some say you should do that. The tray should either be replaced or just remove the tray or cover the tray with a lot of with a lot of saran wrap, and that will be fine. Warming drawers, best not to kasher warming drawers. Best to not use the warming drawers because the heat setting doesn't go high enough. So I would suggest not to use the warming drawers, and those shouldn't be kashered. The grates on top of the stove, the iron or metal grates can be kashered. What you do is, okay, they should be cleaned. Then you put on the fire onto the highest temperature. Here, poskim recommend putting a empty pot of water. Again, as long as it's clean and hasn't been used in the last 24 hours, could be any pot. Put it on top. You put some water in there. The idea of that, guys and gals, is to increase the heat. It's really just a way to contain the fire. It increases the heat, so it koshers the grates. And if you have, let's say, 4 burners, or I don't know, how many burners do you have? 4? 6? 6? I would recommend doing 2 at a time. That's really just so that you don't break the oven. And you put it on the highest setting for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of fire, that will kosher the grates. The burners themselves don't need to be koshered. It's the metal grate on top, and that you clean it and you burn it out for 15 minutes. The area between the burners, that should just be cleaned and covered with aluminum foil. Or if you just never put anything down there, then you're fine. A conventional electric stovetop. Clean the burners, turn the burners on to the highest setting for 15 minutes, make it red hot. The drip pans just need to be cleaned, and the area in the middle should be covered. If you have like a smooth top, a glass smooth top range, that's a little bit of the hardest one. Again, in this case, you clean, don't use for 24 hours, put on the burners for 15 minutes to get it to a glow. And the rest of the area, so then I'm not sure if you're supposed to use boiling water on that. Right, there's the area of the burner, the fire is burning that out. The rest of the area doesn't have the fire, and you might not be able to pour boiling water on it. If you can pour boiling water on it, great. And then you could then that will kosher it, or just place trivets. Just place trivets on the area in the middle. If you want to place the pot down there, just place trivets to make sure to put the pot onto the trivet. Broilers, that's very difficult to kosher. Just clean the broiler pan and area and don't use it. Don't use the broiler for Pesach. The sinks, if it's china or porcelain, can't be koshered. You just need an insert. If it's a stainless steel sink, then you're good. Why? Because that's the principle, right? Kabolo, kach polto. As it absorbs, that's the way to extricate, that's the way to extract. So you pour boiling water, you fill up a couple of pots of boiling water or your urn, whatever it is, and you pour the boiling water slowly over the whole surface. Okay, and you don't have to get but you're pouring it slowly over the whole surface of the sink, and that will kosher the sink. Pour the hot water over the faucets for some extra measure, right? Pour the hot water over the faucets. Okay, question from the Zoom. Can you explain the minhag of putting things in the earth? I feel like my grandma's generation did this. Yeah, that's really a specific custom. If you remember, I said that I mentioned a few different ways of koshering. There are a couple I didn't mention. One of them is that a way to clean and kosher a knife is by putting it into the earth for a period of time. I wouldn't do that. Yes, there is such a custom. There is basis for it. But if you have a knife that you want to kosher, it's an easier way to do it is you just throw it into boiling water, and that koshers the knife. Yes. Countertops. Some people, I've gotten questions on Pesach. Rabbi, how do I kosher my sink? I said, pour boiling water. And the woman said to me, no, but I feel like you need an insert. Rabbi, don't you need an insert? I said, well, I said, I think you could, pour boiling water over it. It's stainless steel sink. She said, I feel like I need it. I said, oh, we'll call her Sarah. I said, Sarah, so use an insert, So certainly when it comes to counter and sinks also, people go above and beyond when it comes to Pesach. I think on the one hand, I feel like you don't want to stress yourself out unnecessarily. On the other hand, it's a beautiful thing. It shows your care and commitment to get it right. It's an important holiday. It's a formation of the Jewish people. And so you want to go above and beyond. There's something beautiful about that. So countertops, a lot of people feel better about covering them. It's the Pesach spirit. And that's what Maxine does. And that's great. So do that. You cover it. You might have like covers that you use every year. That's in the garage that you use to cover it. That's growing up in Kew Garden Hills. That's what we did. If you have marble, granite, stainless steel countertops, so then you could use boiling water. You can use boiling water, and you pour it over the countertop. You're not using the countertop to cook. But sometimes food falls on it, and so that's why there's a minhag to either cover it. If you're not covering it, the minhag is, of course, to kosher it with boiling water. That makes a big mess. So you can use a steamer. You got to get one of these high-powered steamers, and you use the steamer slowly but surely. You move the steamer over the counter. That's one of my leniencies that I'm sharing with you. And that works to kasher the counter. What about the inside of the fridge? Question from the Zoom. What about the inside of the fridge? The fridge should be cleaned. All the racks and shelves should be cleaned in the normal, regular way that you clean your fridge. And then you're not obligated to, but for extra measure, people put down, like maybe a wax paper or like that, either plastic, the plastic thing, you put down something on the shelves. That's more of a custom Frida to do that. It's a good idea to do that if you can. But if you're cleaning it well, technically speaking, you're not obligated, but it's a nice idea to cover, to cover the shelves. You can, you can sell stuff. I wouldn't have stuff in the fridge that's, real chametz. Yeah, I would try to clear out your fridge of that. If in your freezer you have something, just make sure it's clearly covered and taped away so that nobody's going to touch that if it's included in your sale of chametz. What about Formica countertops? So I think that needs to be covered. That needs to be covered. The other thing about Formica is you could just either cover it or you can't kosher it. What you could do is if you're going to put a hot pot down, then you use a trivet. Use a trivet. Or if hot food all falls on the counter, so then you don't eat it. All right, so that's Formica. You can't kosher it, so you cover it, or you're just careful not to put anything hot down on it, unless you just put it on a trivet. Or if something hot falls on it, then you're not going to eat that that meatball that falls on the counter. What else? Yeah.
Soak as long as there was no decorations on it. They would soak it in the bathtub.
Yeah, Milu V'Iri, 3 days, 24 hours. Yeah, yeah.
Is that a yes or no?
That would work for glasses that are just used for cold. Yes, that would work for glasses that are just used for cold. You do it 3 sets of water, 24 hours in the bath. Yeah, that's called Milu V'Iri Gimel Pama. Tablecloths and napkins. Tablecloths and napkins. You could just launder them to use them, and it's fine. You could use tablecloths and napkins. The high chair, clean it thoroughly, and then cover the tray with contact paper. Shelves that you're using, it's a custom to cover it with wax paper or parchment paper or contact paper, whatever it is. KitchenAid and mixers, I think those should be stored away with the chametz utensils. Those should be stored away with the chametz utensils. Refrigerator we spoke about, Kiddush cups we spoke about, silverware we spoke about, glasses and dishes. If you buy a new item for Pesach, if it's metal or glass, it needs to become Jewish. So you need a tovel. If it's metal or glass, then you have to bring it to the mikvah, to the community mikvah, to tovel it. Coffee makers is a whole discussion about coffee makers. Yeah, so maybe I'll yeah. An urn could be used. Just pour boiling water over the spout. One thing I want to tell you about medicine and cosmetics and things like that. There are books about all the medicines that are kosher for Pesach and the medicines that are not kosher for Pesach. I follow the position of the Orthodox Union, and the Orthodox Union's view is my position as well, which is that any medicine that's in pill form, which means you just swallow it as a pill. So that is permissible to have on Pesach. You don't have to worry about it. If you know that there's chametz in there and you have an easy substitute that you can get, okay, so then do that. But what I'm telling you is that in the pill form, it's not considered food.
A capsule.
You're not allowed to eat chametz. If it's a capsule that you just swallow or a pill you just swallow, that doesn't have the status of chametz. And also you're eating it in an unusual way as well. So I just crunched it down. I simplified it a little bit, but that's what leads the OU to say any medicines are fine. And that's why, cosmetics for the face also you could assume are fine. If it's, you're putting on the lips, then I think either cut off the end or buy new lipstick or cut off the end. And you should make sure there's no corn or wheat, in the lipstick, because that's you're putting on the lips. But basically, the halacha is that anything inedible like soap and shampoo and these things, they don't have the status. They don't have the status of chametz, and that's why it's permissible. Kitniot, right? Coke. People who like not cocaine. People who like Coca-Cola. There's a special right manufacturing run of kosher for Pesach Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola soda connoisseurs say that this is the best soda of the year. Why? Because they don't use corn syrup. Corn syrup is kitniot, but they use regular cane sugar. So some say that it's the best soda of the year. But that's why for those who right for Ashkenazim, you have to get kosher for Pesach Coca-Cola to make sure that it's not kitniot. However, kitniot, you're allowed to own kitniot on Pesach. You're not allowed to eat. Ashkenazim are not allowed to eat or drink kitniot, like rice, soy, beans, things like that, corn. But you're allowed to own kitniot. Okay, so if you don't have to throw out if you have cans of soda, that like cans of Coca-Cola, for example, that's not chametz, but just kitniot. Okay, so you just put it away and you don't have it on Pesach, but you don't need to necessarily sell it. Okay, no harm and foul, including in the sale either, but that's that. Any questions? Yes, Chaya.
In Israel, we always kosher the glass. We did the 3 days and 3 nights.
Okay.
And we always used to do
Okay.
it. And it was okay by the Rabbanim.
Yeah, so Chaya is saying that if you have glasses that are just used for cold, I think the minig is still to just have kosher for Pesach glasses nowadays. But you're absolutely right. You could do it. It's called milu v'iru gimel pamim, which is that you fill it with water, and you leave it for 24 hours, and then you change the water, and then you change the water again. So it takes you 72 hours, and that's one way of koshering. That's right. So Lisa, thanks for mentioning the putting it in the ground. That is a way of koshering, and also the filling of the glasses. That is a way of koshering. Yeah.
No, when my son made a mistake and used a parva knife for flakes, and I wanted to make it parva again. That's when I put it in the ground.
Okay.
For
Okay.
3 days, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's but what you could just do also is you could just put it into boiling with the knife. You could just put it into boiling water and that'll kosher it. Let me just take a look at the question on Zoom because I see I might have missed a couple. Hold on. Last year, some candy said kosher Pesach, but it was for Sfardim. Okay, very important. You have to be careful. It might say kosher Pesach for those people who eat kitniot. So that you have to be very careful that it says kosher for Pesach. OU, I think kosher for Passover is kosher for Passover. But some of the other hachsherim, it might say kosher for Passover for those who eat kitniot. That means it's good for Sfardim, but it's not good for Ashkenazim. I have not seen it yet if the stores are designated which is for Sfardim, which is for Ashkenazim. You really, I do think that there are some markets in Pico that will have
Different
products that they say kosher for Pesach, but it's really kitnio, so you have to be careful. Last year, the self-cleaning mode destroyed my oven, and when replaced, the technician told me not to use that mode anymore. How else can I kasher the oven? Okay, so I explained to you, do not use self-cleaning mode, will destroy the oven. Okay, we have a couple people that are corroborating what I said. That's what I suggested. You just, you clean it, wait 24 hours, you turn it on to the highest temperature for an hour. Very good. Okay, good. I spoke about clay and china, earth, fridge. Well, glasses were expensive back in the day. Very good. Okay, last question from Chaya, and then Ayala. I don't know what Silan is.
Like from dates.
Oh.
Yeah.
Daytime.
So in glass, all year long, I mean, it comes from Israel, and all year long, it's OU and P. So I asked the guy at Glatt, the Sephardic, and he saw me buying it for Pesach. He said, "Oh, you're Ashkenazi, you cannot use it."
Mm-hmm.
And I was not sure. He said there's something new in it. So I looked at the ingredients. I didn't see any, and
If you email me or send me, or I'll write out if you want me to look into it.
yeah.
You just yeah. What's it called? I don't have a pen or something to write it. Oh yeah, I do have a pen actually. SYLAN. Okay, I'll look into it.
Yeah, I sent you a picture.
Also, okay, Heinz kosher Pesach. There's a special. No, it's not all Heinz. You have to find the Heinz that it says is kosher for Passover on it. Also, my wife told me because I'm making the meatballs last night. I'm making the meat for Pesach, like I've done a couple times in the past. So she told me that the imitation soy sauce, stay away from that. My wife recommended. There is kosher for Pesach, but stay away. There's something called like coconut aminos. Have you heard of that? Coconut aminos. So I found that in Western Kosher yesterday. It's a substitute for soy sauce that's kosher for Pesach. Just make sure it says kosher for Pesach. It's called coconut aminos. It's a substitute for soy sauce. I wanted to end by giving everyone here a yasher koach for putting thought and preparation into this special holiday. There's an expression in Pirkei Avot, lefum tzara agra. According to the effort is the reward. Did you want to ask something, Ayala? Sorry. Okay, so you know what, we'll end with that, okay? Lefum tzara agra. Yeah, yeah, I'll be happy to give you the recipe. Yeah. I had one recipe. Jordana Nixit gave me a different recipe. So, lefum tzara agra. According to the effort is the reward. And also, there's a lot of sources that talk about the significance of the preparation that you put into something. And that there's religious value to the preparation. So the shopping and the cooking and the cleaning of the house and the koshering, to try to serve Hashem with simcha and to recognize that also has value, because that shows the attentiveness that you're putting into the holiday and the care that you have for family and all these different things, right? Let's say for a simcha, we should all celebrate simchas. You put a lot of effort into planning a simcha, right? Because you want to get it just right. And the preparation that you put into it also has value. That has significance. When you prepare for Shabbos every week, that has significance, and to always serve Hashem with simcha. So I give everyone here, it should be just 1 second, Ayala is going to share a couple of thoughts about her parents. But that concludes my shir. I wish everyone should be a chag, kosher v'sameach, and we should celebrate the geula of Am Yisrael. Go ahead. Thank you so much for joining, Ayala. Talk to us.
And you do my mother. All people my father has been gone, was just now 48 years. My mother is 12 years. And it's interesting, my father passed away day after Shushan Purim, and my mother passed away Mamash Beretzesa. So that's why this year is kind of appropriate. I'm doing both at the same time. It's right in between. They were an amazing couple as a couple. They were individually very special people, as those who knew my mother will attest to it, my father will attest to as well. And I know it's 48 years, but it really doesn't feel like it. I miss both of them greatly, and I hope they rest in peace and are goodly with family and Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you for sharing those beautiful memories. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're gonna still we have class next Monday, and even the Monday after that. Okay, so we still have a class the next 2 weeks before Pesach. Thank you all so much for joining by Zoom and in person. and Shavuot Tov. You're welcome, of course, to reach out to me with any questions. Anna, good to see you. Madeline, Carol, everyone. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Rabbi. Hi, Mom.
Really great to see you. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'll be in Los Angeles for the holidays. Look forward to seeing you then.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, I'll be here the first day. I'm going away Chol Hamoed the last days, but I'll be here first day. So maybe we'll see.
Hopefully, I'll see you then.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.